Ehud Barak is here. He's had a long history in Israeli politics. He currently serves as Minister of Defense and Deputy Prime Minister in Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition government. He's also leader of the recently established Independence Party. From 1999 to 2001, he was Prime Minister. I am pleased to have him back at this table. Welcome. Let me talk first about Iran. There's been a recent flurry because of the IAEA report, suggesting the Iranians are closer to having a nuclear weapon and the missiles to deliver them. What's your assessment of where they are?
Yeah, they're exactly where the IAEA report says, and they are there for quite a long time. The real difference is that for some reasons El-Baradei got a Nobel Peace Prize, but he never told the truth to the whole people. And now came Amano, and he decided just to tell bluntly what his experts found. It is quite sobering impact. It's clear that they are determined to reach nuclear capability. None of these series of experiments that they were running with neutron sources or with kind of simultaneous explosions on heavy metals and certain other activities cannot be explained but through the glasses of their pursuing of nuclear military capability. Now, it's not easy to see it because the time really had come to call a spade, and Iran, you know, it's if it looks like a duck and walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. They are trying to become, they are ready to deceit, to defy the whole world and reach nuclear capability.
If you were them, wouldn't you want a nuclear weapon?
Probably. I know it's not. I don't delude myself that they are doing it just because of Israel. They have their history of 4,000 years. They look around. They see the Indians are nuclear. The Chinese are nuclear. Pakistan is nuclear. Even small South Korea, not to mention the Russians. And they look westward. They see, Saddam tried it. Right. Bashar al-Assad tried it, Gaddafi tried it, Israel allegedly has it. But it doesn't matter because a Middle East with a nuclear Iran is a totally different place. No way to hold any discipline about
so you're saying to
non-proliferation.
You say to them, we understand you have ambition to have a nuclear weapon. We understand that you look around, you say the neighbors have nuclear weapons, Israelis have nuclear weapons. Saying we want to have nuclear weapons. You say, I understand that. However, we can't let you have nuclear weapons because you're different. Is that what you say?
I say they are different. I'm not saying we cannot. I say we collectively cannot. Right. The world can afford the United States of America being nuclear. Under certain kind of situation, they can afford Russia or China, even India.
Korea?
To have North Korea, I think it's a major mistake that they were allowed. And I think that if Gaddafi would have been allowed to turn nuclear, no one would have dared, neither Berlusconi nor Sarkozy nor Cameron, to order the recent events there. In fact, I once asked one of your previous leaders, what would have happened with the liberation of Kuwait if Saddam could have credibly announced that he has few crude nuclear devices. Probably it would never have happened. And try to imagine what would have happened beyond the killing of any chance of non-proliferation regime.
And what did that leader say when you asked him?
He raised his hand this way, said, of course, there could have been
in other words, we could not have stopped the Iraqis from going into Kuwait if they had nuclear weapons.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that it was extremely clever by your government and the British to seize the opportunity when Gaddafi could be neutralized from getting it. But think of it, if Iran turns nuclear, no way the Saudis will not turn nuclear immediately, no way to block the Turks from turning nuclear, probably even future government in Egypt. That will open a new round of nuclear arms race under much less responsible hands, probably in governments headed by Muslim Brotherhood in some places. You never know. It's too risky. But think beyond it. Think that we sat idle or exchanging interviews and no one took crippling or little sanctions against the Iranians in order to block them. And they turned nuclear. And 5 years from now, in your 25th anniversary of the program, you will find that you wake up some morning, Qatar or Bahrain was overwhelmed by, within 2 or 3 days by Iranians and taken over. Who in the world will come to liberate them? And it's more sensitive even than the deserts of Cyrenaica and Tripolitania. It's the source of 40% of the energy of the world. That's the place where worldly, global terror is sponsored and encouraged. I believe it's too dangerous. Whatever kind of risks people can raise to the table in regard to more tougher action to convince the Iranians to stop it, try always to think what will happen if they already turn nuclear and now, like North Korea, they feel that they enjoy foolproof immunity against any attempt to topple them.
Do you believe that there is a negotiating strategy or a sanction strategy that will force them to turn away?
I say, hypothetically or intellectually, there is.
But what is it? And if
not exactly.
Now, if not now, when are you going to use it?
If together with the Americans, Europeans, Russia, China, and India would have joined hands and tell them explicitly, we are going to block any transaction, financial transaction with your central bank and with any financial institutions, and we are going to launch a quarantine over the import and export of crude oil and distillates. That would push the Iranian leadership to a corner where they have to decide whether they are ready to continue or go into what comes with this decision. But I have no illusion
that would do it.
I'm convinced that if such a lethal or a paralyzing, crippling sanctions would would materialize, they will have to stop it. But I have no illusion that it's going to happen. I don't believe.
Well, let's take it one by one. Europeans would do it or not do it?
I don't want to go into... I believe that if everyone in the world was like your government, probably the British or the French government, it could have been done. But that's not the mood in the world. The Chinese, the Russians, other players, from their own reasons that always you can understand. I can understand, but I feel that it causes a major damage and it might lead to the unacceptable situation, which nowadays all the leaders of the world, they make statements as if they adopted our phrase, the coin, that we have to do it, it's urgent, no option should be removed from the table. But as of now, they cannot even bring enough political will to do it through the UN Security Council or outside the UN Security Council.
So if that is in fact the end result, what's left?
No, I might be interviewed once again if it's the only result is more conversations around the world.
Okay, but if that doesn't work, there's no alternative but a military solution, correct?
You know,
that's an easy question.
It's it's easy question, but someone that should be contemplated before you answer it. So I prefer to stick to our old usual answer. We think that any means should be used, and at the same time we recommend to our friends all around the world, and we take it upon ourselves not to remove any option from the table.
If, in fact, a military option is undertaken, can they destroy their nuclear program militarily?
I prefer not to answer this question during this interview.
Okay. I understand all that, and that's your responsibility as defense minister, but I mean, it's often speculated as to whether you can simply delay it, but you can't terminate it, that a military action can only delay it if it's directed against the facilities. That's part of the conventional wisdom. I think the Defense Secretary has said that himself. The former Defense Secretary, Bob Gates, has said something akin to that. My other question, though, and just explain to me this in terms of whatever construct you want to, what happens on day 2 after there's a military attack against Iran to destroy or impede their military, their nuclear program? What happens on day 2? And what happens if there's a response from Hezbollah onto Israel, if there's a conventional wisdom that Israel was responsible? What does day 2 look like? What does day 3 look like? And are we looking at a Middle East going up in flames if that happens? And the thing that unleashes it would be a military attack against Iran.
For obvious reasons, I would not go into this in this interview. Probably if there will be a need in a certain time in the future, I will reappear here. But let me tell you, when leaders around the world are saying loud and clear, we are determined to prevent Iran from turning nuclear. When they say a nuclear Iran is unacceptable, and especially when they say once and again in the recent weeks after the IAEA report came to the public, and it's totally different from the NIE report of 2007. When leaders of the world are saying it, and when they repeat no option should be removed from the table, I would assume that they really mean it. And that at certain levels, and in more than one capital in the world, people are considering what it means. I don't think that it deserves any further kind of detailing right now, but I can tell you that we are living in a tough neighborhood. I once called it a villa in the jungle. And I don't see that you experience a lot of days which are totally quiet, no war around the globe with American participation for quite a long time. Whoever thinks that by acquiescing with an Iran turning nuclear and get the automatic immunity that stems out of such capability, the world will be a simpler place to live in, or a place where the risk of finding yourself in a real clash with them is a little bit simpler. It's totally wrong. That's not the case. We have to consider in a solid, contemplative, trying to think not just 2 or 3 steps ahead, probably 10 steps ahead, but without a drop of self-delusion, and with the clear lessons of what happened in the last generation.
Let me switch to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Where is that? You had this effort to get statehood going through the Security Council. There is some speculation that they cannot get 9 votes, and therefore the United States will not have to veto it. Is that your reading of where they are?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that the attempt to reach it through the UN Security Council failed. It failed as a result of American huge diplomatic effort, and the fact that this administration, that some people question their commitment to Israel, I think the opposite, showed the readiness and signaled the readiness to veto it if necessary. And that's something which I would not have taken for granted, and we highly appreciate it.
So you're saying that the Obama administration, contrary to the opinions of some people in the American Jewish community, that this administration has not been pro-Israel, that they have been very pro-Israel and very helpful to Israel at important moments, and that you are here to underline. You're not saying that, or you are saying that?
I'm saying very clearly that this administration, in regard to Israel's security, and we are traditionally supported by each and every American president in the last generation, but under this administration, we went even further into a clear, deep commitment to the security of Israel. And beyond, I see them ready, the administration is ready to veto steps which are somewhat go against or perceived by us being against the interests of Israel. And I still remember very vividly a weekend night, quite dramatic one at Cairo, and hundreds of demonstrators entered into the embassy. It was... We worked in many channels, but one of them was the administration. I called Panetta.
You called Leon Panetta?
Yeah.
Defense Minister?
Yeah, and he called President Obama, and the American administration put its weight to the utmost extent in order to make sure that it will end up properly, which really happened. So I would not underestimate the commitment not to Israel and not to the struggle against terror. I should remind you that for those who think that this administration is a little bit soft, go and ask Osama bin Laden, go and ask the Haqqanis, go ask a dozen of other quite pretentious terror leaders whom you cannot contact today because of the readiness of this administration to take action, not just to talk, but at the right moment to take action. And I spent my lifetime in uniform, not in TV interviews, but doing things with my own hands. I know to appreciate this.
One new additional wrinkle to all of this, an additional development, is that it appears that President Abbas is meeting with members of the Mashal and others from Hamas and looking to bring those two very distinct Palestinian competitive instances together. Is that a good thing?
I'm not sure. We have a lot of doubts about the Hamas. The Hamas, in order to become a legitimate partner or player in this peace process, should accept the quartet demands, namely to recognize Israel, to deny and to leave behind terror, and to accept, recognize all previous agreements that had been achieved. That's something which is not going to happen. In fact, when I try to analyze what's the difference between the present situation and what we had some 12 years ago when I sat as a prime minister with Clinton and tried to push a proposal that might strike a deal. One of the real differences is that Hamas, a terrorist organization that says explicitly they want to see Israel disappearing, something that they had in common with the Iranian leadership. They are there and they control half of the Palestinian people. So you ask yourself, okay, assume that trust had been resumed between Abu Mazen, Netanyahu, the quartet, President Obama, and we can strike a deal. What will we do with it? We put it on a shelf. Who will arrange that the PA will take over once again control of Gaza?
But all the better for them to have an agreement and speak from one voice. Is it not?
No, technically, it could be comfortable.
Israel has often said we have nobody to negotiate with. We have nobody to bargain with. If there is a united front on the Palestinian side, why isn't that better?
I don't buy that we don't have someone to talk to. I believe that we are not supposed to elect the Palestinian president. It's up to them. They elected Abu Mazen. He is, I can imagine, I had experience with a guy which was worse, and I can easily imagine people in the future will be worse. There are two very good people, both Abu Mazen, he's an elected president, and Fayyad, the premier. If we can help, if the world should do something, it's not we, Israel is, ironically enough, if we try too hard to help him, we might damage him. But the world has to help Fayyad to push his bottom-up effort to establish a de facto embryonic state, and at the same time to encourage Abu Mazen and us to come into negotiation, because that's the real issue. Hamas wants to establish this unity government at the expense of probably sending Fayyad back home. That will be a major damage. To the best of my judgment, to the extent I can judge it, Fayyad is something very good to happen. The real,
because he's created a civil society in Ramallah.
Yeah, the real foundation of the present rating, so to speak, of the Palestinian entity, both in the markets as well as in the political world, is what Abu Mazen together with Fayyad had accomplished, namely putting terror behind. It's a quiet, very quiet, relatively very quiet situation. That should continue, but we cannot accept an agreement where we have agreement with Ramallah and 10,000 rockets, that's the number of rockets now in Gaza, keep shooting indiscriminately over the heads of our civilian population. That's crazy.
Let's establish this, though, okay?
Yeah.
Is it Hamas that's doing that, or is it somebody else?
It's under the area of Hamas. Sometimes it's Hamas. Today, just a few hours ago, there was some Hamas, probably crazy guy, I don't know, he probably didn't... Hamas. He's a Hamas guy, and he shot at Israel, and we now, probably when we are talking, I ordered some attacks on some installations of Hamas. But basically, they are in control, so they have responsibility. If you had a neighbor, whoever, choose one of them, who would be launching rockets daily into your citizenry, you would not ask who exactly did it. You expect whoever is in control there to make to put an end to it immediately.
But everybody would agree with that, and everybody agrees you can't simply stand by and have missiles being shot at you, regardless of who's shooting the missiles. You got to stop the missiles from being shot at you.
Charlie, everyone agrees in principle, and everyone not everyone. Many criticize Israel when we take the proper action to put an end to it.
Then that's the definition of what the proper action is, too. There's a definition of what the proper action, and a lot of people in Israel had trouble with the invasion of Gaza, as you know.
And many observers abroad use double standard. They do not ask themselves honestly what would have happened if your family or your kids, if you have, were attacked this way. I once brought an American candidate for president named Barack Obama to Sderot, to this city, and he gave an interview to American TV stations when all these rockets at his background. And he said, if my two daughters would have been living there, I would do whatever it takes to put an end to it.
So who doesn't say that then? Tell me who doesn't say it. You said not everyone agrees. Who doesn't agree? The United States agrees. Is that
many.
Well,
probably go to
France. Does France agree? Does France agree?
Go a few blocks from here to the
United Nations?
UN General Assembly. You can find representatives of more than 100 countries.
Who thinks that Israel should not respond if rockets
No, that Israel should not respond in any way which is effective. We are not talking about response in a démarche to some embassy. We are talking about action that aimed at those terrorists and inevitably cause some collateral damage.
Do you think the
invasion? And we are kind of criticizing.
Yeah. Was the invasion of Gaza an appropriate response in your judgment?
If worst come to worst, I don't want to predict if Hamas will keep acting or allowing actions in Israel that will deteriorate once and again into indiscriminate launching of rockets into other population. Nothing could be removed from the table, including much wider operations against it.
Khalid Mashal said to me in Damascus, if the occupation stops, the resistance stops. Does those words have any meaning to you?
It probably have certain meaning under some certain groups within the Palestinian Authority. If you just read English translation or translation into English of the charter of Hamas, you would understand that it just deceits you. What is written there is a clear manifesto that Israel should somehow disappear. That it's somewhat artificial, it should disappear. It probably takes tactics because the world is not empty. There are people like Charlie Rose that will raise tough questions if you announce explicitly that you are aiming at just eliminating Israel. But Hamas plans to do it gradually, but never losing sight of terror, of not recognizing Israel, and not accepting the quartet rules.
What should happen?
We should find a way to push forward to help pushing forward, we cannot do it alone, the bottom-up effort of Fayyad to create normalcy in the West Bank. We should find a way to keep standing firm against the terror of Hamas, and we should go with the quartet and start a process, a genuine process that will try, if we cannot reach an agreement, and probably that's the case, we should find the interim steps that should be taken. You can find some examples in the roadmap, you can find some examples in other places, but stop this blame game. When the Palestinians tell you the Israelis are building in the settlement, it's propaganda.
Well, wait, they're not building in the settlement?
No, we build, but we built
You're building are you building in East Jerusalem?
Yeah, of course, that's our capital. We built. We do not build in the within the Palestinian suburbs. We build in empty areas or in Jewish neighborhoods. But let me tell you honestly, when I was sitting with Clinton and Arafat in very sincere negotiation that failed because of him 10 years ago, we were building in 4 times the pace which we are building now. And when Olmert came so close with some cigars and some map on the table with Abu Mazen, the same Abu Mazen, not Arafat, to reach an agreement, we were building about twice the pace.
So you were saying that they were prepared...
it's not part of the problem.
Okay, but wait a minute. This is a very important point. Stop. It's a very important point, please. You're saying that the issue of settlements, they were prepared to negotiate an agreement and essentially had an agreement that seemed to settle most of the issues, and there were settlements being built at that moment, and they were not an impediment to an agreement. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm saying it. And the reality is that, you know, after 44 years, the whole Jewish settlements in the whole West Bank together doesn't cover even 2% of the area.
But if, in fact,
if
settlements
we take 10%, we have a good settlement blocks. It's not a problem.
But it is a problem. I mean, Palestinians and settlements, it's a problem for them.
It became a problem because somewhat without thinking farsightedly enough, some leaders donated the formula that not a single brick should be put. That's a little bit too far, and the Palestinians immediately adopted it as a standard. They say we are not ready to be less Palestinians than some world leaders.
How much difference was there between what you negotiated at Camp David with Arafat, which Arafat refused to step forward with, and what Ehud Olmert negotiated with Abu Mazen? Were they essentially the same deal?
Yeah, from distance it's the same. And if we will have to reach any agreement in the future...
a little bit different here, but it's essentially the same deal was presented to them.
Basically, it's the only possible deal. Even if it takes 5, 15 or 50 years, that will be the deal.
Stay with me.
Yeah.
Would the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, accept that deal?
No, I cannot tell you. If I tell you he accepts, you know, it's...
The former Prime Minister was prepared, and the former Prime Minister, you were prepared to accept that essential deal. I'm asking you if Benjamin Netanyahu would accept that deal, and you know.
I tell you the following. Those 2 pages in history are written. We did not try to erase them, to say it did not happen. It happened, and it's known. Now we enter under this government. It's a right-wing government. Still, this government, in the Bar Ilan speech, Netanyahu said light and clear, 2 states for 2 nations.
Well, he said it here. Israel, but he also now says 2 states for 2 nations, and he also says...
He repeated it in the Congress in AIPAC. If you look carefully into the wording, there are many flexibilities there. I told Peres recently, President Peres, that if I look literally in what Bibi said in the Knesset and then here, I don't see the big difference between what he said and what we, Peres and myself,
that's what I'm asking.
Pushed 15 years ago. Of course, there is difference of 15 years, which is a pity. I think that Netanyahu
on the crucial points of right of return and Jerusalem.
It's the same.
Okay.
It's the same. I don't see the difference. Difference is technical and political. You cannot expect from Israeli leader to expose positions before he knows that there will be any agreement because he has an agreement. It's like a political suicide. I would not expect him to expose position. I can tell you that I would not have seated in this government if my belief was that agreement is not possible with this government. But I can tell you that our consideration for security, for example, just raised since that, because I ordered as a leader of Israel full pull out from Lebanon after 18 years to the last square inch. We got there 50,000 rockets now covering all Israel and missiles. Sharon ordered full pullout from Gaza, last settlement, last everything that a Palestinian can dream. We expect it to be tranquility there. It happened now they got 10,000 rockets. So you have to think it over. It's not that simple, and I fully justify Netanyahu that he insists that strong security arrangements will come and we'll see the readiness to accept them in the eyes of Abu Mazen before he starts to talk about major concessions on the border. And I want to repeat it. I don't think that anyone can know or should know in advance what he will say about what's the kind of concession he might be ready to
But it's an important
consider.
point for you to say that there's no difference in what Oner was prepared to do, and you believe that Netanyahu would accept that kind of deal.
No, I didn't say it.
You didn't say it?
No, I didn't say it. I say that the test will come only when there is a genuine negotiation with no precondition, where it's clear that the security interests of Israel, which exposed to be more sensitive to realities than people could have expected, would be taken care of in a systematic manner. Only then you will know how far he's ready to go.
You know how many interviews I've done about this. You do. How many have done with you?
Over 20
with Netanyahu.
years, probably 100.
Netanyahu was here when he came to the UN. Same table, same question. Although he wanted to sit in this chair rather than that chair. So I asked him, I asked you, I asked Abbas, I asked Arafat, I've asked everybody, what is a formula that will guarantee Israel's security? What is it?
You know,
what do they have to agree to accept so that Israel's security? Because you know at the other end, the Arab states are ready to, they're ready to come in.
Certain elements are known. It appeared on many speeches and many statements of Israel. We expect the major settlement blocks as well as the Jewish suburbs in Jerusalem be part of Israel, namely within the border, and it will still leave a contiguous area for the Palestinians in the West Bank. We expect security arrangement to be set, the Palestinian state to be demilitarized, and Netanyahu said loud and clear that we expect a long-term Israeli military presence along the Jordan River. And I know that,
with that?
Yeah.
A long-term military presence
along the Jordan River.
Yeah. The Jordan River is on the West Bank.
No. It was said in previous years that we need Israeli presence in the Jordan Valley. And that's not exactly the same. I didn't see any response from the Palestinian side. I didn't see any response. I think that these are extremely reasonable demands, very generous, in fact, taking certain kind of risks that we cannot fully answer.
So what is...
No one can tell you honestly that there will be no rockets and missiles coming from the West Bank once the Palestinian state will be established. You cannot even promise us. No one can give us guarantee that 10 years after we sign the deal... But there has to be something
you will accept in order to get an agreement.
Yeah, we expect. I showed that I was ready to expect. Olmert was ready to accept. Netanyahu, till now, cannot say that he found readiness on the other side to leave behind all the preconditions and sit down in a closed room, probably far from the public eyes, probably without even calling it a negotiation, but do something actively in order to reach either a full agreement or at least a mutually agreed or coordinated interim agreement that will gradually lead toward a full agreement. I don't believe that it's honest or fair to describe Netanyahu's government or Netanyahu himself as the obstacle for peace. Abu Mazen is okay, Palestinians are okay. That's not true.
Was it fair for the French president to say that Netanyahu was a liar?
I don't want to I don't think, I felt uneasy about it. I know enough about human behavior to assume that such exchanges sometimes takes place, but I think that it's not fair. It shouldn't happen.
Is a one-state solution the worst thing that could happen to Israel?
Probably the worst, probably good competition for the first place. It's extremely bad for Israel.
Because?
Because Israel had been established as to become a Zionist, democratic Jewish state, of course, with all the rights on the personal level and all the respect for minorities and others, but basically it's the fulfillment of a Jewish dream to come back to our place. And I think that I take it for granted that the only solution is to delineate certain line within which we'll have a solid Jewish majority for generations to come, side by side with Palestinian entity, the demilitarized one, that with all doubts that you might carry with yourself about what will happen if 10 years from now Hamas will be elected in free election, it's still better than the prospect of sleeping on this slippery slope into two communities bleeding into each other for centuries, into kind of Bosnia or Belfast-like situation, or not to mention other examples.
Exactly. Finally, though, do you feel that the Arab Spring and where it's going, and whatever, as we hear more and more understanding of the expansion of Islamist parties, is it a developing negative trend for Israel? Is history working against you so that there is a ticking clock?
I had never an illusion about our situation. I already told you that I used to call it a villa in the jungle, but we have a great interest in developments moving forward into enlightenment on the Arab world. I think that, historically speaking, it's an extremely moving movement. The fact that Arab peoples standing on their feet, starting to demand basic human rights, which are taken for granted in North America, that's really moving. But it will take a long, long history before it will materialize. And in the middle short term, you cannot expect them to. They are not ripe for Jeffersonian democracy. But we have to be we have to develop certain sense of confidence, self-reliance, developing friendships and alliances around the world, reducing tensions on every scale that we can, with Palestinians, with Egyptians, with Turks, with whoever, and focus on the most important issues, trying to move forward. You know, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not the reason for this Arab Spring, but it is used in a sophisticated manner as an excuse to nurture this animosity toward Israel. But we have our own interest, and Palestinians should have their own interest to solve it, not because the Arab Spring, but independently of it. And we have to find ways to iron out the difference with Turkey. It doesn't serve neither of us. Turkey is not an enemy of Israel. We were very close friends. We are not close friends for the time being, but we should find ways to iron this out. And if we are strong economically, we are strong physically, we are the strongest country 1,000 miles around Jerusalem. And I think that we should have enough self-confidence to look around, open eye, to understand the complications, and still to be there to develop Israel, to make it flourishing, and to act thoughtfully on any issue which happens besides or around our borders. At certain points, by being able to decide what to do, and in other circumstances to decide what not to do.
Thank you for coming. Pleasure
Thank
to see you.